Welcome back to Subspace Games. Today we're going to be adding some poly trails to the game to give us an idea of where the ball's been. It's kind of like a little tracer trail, so as we position objects we'll be able to see how we can put them in the path of where the ball has been. So let's jump right in. Let me load up. Let's see, the game's already loaded up. Let's go ahead and go into the Polygon Trail editor. And we'll click on that, and we're going to call this ball trail. Let's do that. Okay, and let's start it up so we can see what it's doing currently. So if you remember from way back in the beginning where we talked about the UI, a poly trail is just basically a polygon type object that trails behind another object. And so we can see that it's here behind this, and we're going to make some adjustments to it until we get it to about what we want for the ball. So the first thing I'm going to do is on the general tab I'm going to use auto start, and that means that I'm not going to have to worry about starting this up. It's just going to work straight out of the box, so to speak. Okay, on the polygon trail, the number of segments you can kind of get, that's about what you've got to work with. So 32 segments is going to get you a certain amount of length. If we start increasing the number of segments, then what it'll allow us to do is you won't see a difference here, but as we go and add down below, if we switch the lifetime, now we're going to get significant distance, whereas if we were down here at 16 still, you'll notice that it starts to kind of trail off because it's only allowing us to have 16 segments of the polygon. So we're going to go all the way up to 1024. We'll move the step up a little bit. Now you'll notice that the step, it kind of shows you, how far the polygon goes for each step that it's using. So we've got 1024 segments. Each step we're doing at 0.53. It looks really blocky. So you move it back down here and it smooths out. Maybe go down just a little bit there. So that's looking pretty good. You'll notice that it pretty much sticks around, which is what we want to have happen. We want the ball to go through the level and have this trail that hangs around for a little bit. Let's turn on additive blending. It gives a little bit more pop. And we're not going to do a texture map. That's basically where you can just apply a texture to it, but we don't need to do that. Let's move the middle time up. These are just the times. So the lifetime, the entire lifetime is going to be, this value, and then the middle time, I believe, is, it starts to fade out after a certain amount of time. So if we move the middle time up, it gives us a little bit more time before it starts fading. So that's looking pretty good. So let's go ahead and save it. So Polygon Trail save. And let's stop. Let's load the scene. And I'm going to do something that's going to cause a problem, but I want you to see what happens and why we have to do what we're going to have to do to fix it. So we want this to be applied to the ball, so let's right click on the ball. Let's go to Attributes, Special Effects, Add Polygon Trail, and we'll add the ball poly. I'm going to switch over to Runtime View so we can see this a little bit better, and let's play the scene. And now you'll notice that we have this trail that's coming out of the ball, but see how it rotates around, and it's, it's looking kind of funky. It's got spirals going on. And so in general, when you have something like a poly trail, you don't want to apply it to a body that has physics applied. You don't want to apply it directly because you're going to get all those rotations. So let's stop this and let's add another model, and this is going to be a helper model. Let's call this ball helper. So the idea behind a helper is that we can parent it to an object, and then we can turn off all the rotations, and so it's going to mimic what the object does, but then we can attach all the special effects and things we want to the helper object because we don't have to worry about it rotating around. So let's reload the level here. Let's move the ball helper into the scene. And let's turn this back to this mode here so we can see the helper. And let's go to the attribute editor and let's move it to the position of the ball, which was 0, 5, 0. So you can't see it, but it's right in where the ball is. And we're going to go ahead and parent it to the ball so that it does exactly what the ball does. Now when we group something, the last thing that we select is we select the group is what's going to be the parent. So let's start with the ball helper. We'll hold down control and we'll click on ball. Now we have them both selected. We'll right click and go to group selection, and you'll have this option here that says parent to last selected object. So we'll click OK. Now that you notice that the ball helper is sub entry under ball because it's part of that group and it's a child of the ball object. Now we won't be able to select the ball helper. In order to do that, we have to go up here to where we have single, so we can have single or group selection. We'll switch to single. Now we can click on the ball helper alone, and then let's go to the attribute editor so we can look at some attributes here. You'll notice that it says that the parent is a ball, and then 1 in parentheses. It's just the name of the object right now. Someday we should probably go back and rename it, but for now it's fine. The big thing I want to do is let's turn off, we're not going to worry about scaling. We want to turn off rotation. We want to turn off scaling and rotation again. So all we want is it to inherit the parent translation, so just the movement. And that'll keep it from spinning around like you saw the object doing. Let's go ahead and leave it like that. And now let's attach the polytrail. So we'll go back to the Scene Explorer, right click on Ball Helper, go to Attributes and Special Effects, add Polygon Trail, Ball Trail, click OK. Let's go up here and save our scene. Actually, there's one other thing I need to do, and that's, let's go back into the Attributes Editor and let's go to the Special Effects tab. You notice that we don't get a whole lot of options here. But what we can do is we're going to right click on the ball trail and go to Edit Anchors. Now these are the locations on the parent object that the ball is going to be anchored to. So we want it to run from left to right, and we want it to be centered. So you'll notice here that from what I can tell, these are local coordinates, and so this is basically if we start this at 0 and then we go to -1, we're going to be starting from the center of the object and going 1 unit off to, let's see, this is XYZ negative. So that's in the, let's move this to, that's the Z direction. We want it to come off in the X direction. So let's try 0.5 to -0.5. Now this is a little different than what I had done in testing, so let's see what happens. I just kind of had a revelation of sorts, and let's see if this works out. I don't know if it will. So let's save the scene. Let's switch back over to the runtime mode. Let's play and let's fire. Okay, actually that does work out quite. Oh, you know what? I forgot to turn it off on the ball. So we've got 2 polytrails going on right now. So let's hit F9 to pause and right click and go to Edit Current Scene, and then go to our Scene Explorer, click on the ball, and let's see, you know what, I want to do that individually, so let's do the individual, select ball, right click, go to Attributes, Special Effects, go Ball Trail, and then Remove. Yes, we want to remove. We'll save the scene. Yes. Okay, we were right in the middle of running the scene, so if we hit F9 we should be able to go back to the scene. You notice that the polytrail is still there. It's starting to fade out. That's what we want to have happen. So let's launch this again. So yeah, so there was a little bit of an issue that I kind of worked out here on the spot as I was thinking about it. Originally I had the anchors for the polytrail were in the Z-axis, which, you know, the Z-axis is not, well, it's basically perpendicular to the camera, so it's going into the scene. So things were not quite the way they should have been. So if you notice something like that, you may want to go back and check your anchors. So what I did is I anchored it on the X-axis on the ball, and so now when we launch it, you can see that it comes right out the back. It looks nice, and it's always right there behind the ball because it's attached to that helper object. Now from above, this is what we get. We get this trail. So now as I move an object around, I can say, oh, I want it to be right there right in the trail. So then when I launch, you'll see it go, and boom, it's going to hit because it was right there. Now you also notice that So when it resets to the beginning, it also leaves a trail. We don't want that to happen. So let's hit Control Shift F9 to stop. Let's go over to our code, and we're going to have to add some code here. Let's do, this is going to be the aim-cam AI, and it's going to be in the on enter frame, because that was the code that we had that checks to see if the ball is idle, and if it does, it resets everything back to the beginning. So it's right in here, reset dynamics and all this stuff. So we're going to add a little bit of code here, and let's call this SFX for special effects. You know what, actually I copied and pasted the wrong stuff, so this is going to be stop. Okay, so stop all trails. So basically we're taking, if you notice up here, we're taking the handle to an object and we are stopping all the trails on the object. So I'm getting out of the scene, I'm grabbing the ball helper, which reminds me, let's jump back over to our scene. I'm going to click off the screen here just for a second. Actually, let's move this over. And for the ball helper, we want to set the name of this to ball helper so that we can grab it as a tagged object. Okay, ball helper. Alright, so that's all set. Save scene. Let's come back over to the code. Okay, so we're stopping all trails when the ball resets to its entry point. And then, because we want it to turn back on, let's go to mouse button down. And if we are launching the ball, which is this area, see if the object is not movable, there was no object, launch the ball. So let's put that in here. Special effects, start all trails. Again, this is asking for the object, so rather than create a reference to this object, just, you know, for this one thing, I'm just going to go ahead and grab the tagged object again. We'll call this ball helper. Okay, hit Control S to save. I don't think I saved over here. Control S, F7 to compile all. Let's jump back over to the scene. Let's move the camera over. We'll play. I've noticed that this happens sometimes when I'm doing some of my work, that it jumps over to the overhead view, and I think it has something to do with the editor keeping things loaded in the background. So if you see that, just go ahead and hit stop and then reload the scene. But now we're going to launch the ball. We'll see where it goes, and then when it resets back to the beginning, you know what, actually that's a good point. So I did something different than what I had done in my testing, and that is, instead of doing stop all trails, what we want to do is, I believe it's pause all trails. And what that does is that allows the trails to stick around. So let's hit F7, let's go to general, let's hit play, we'll launch the ball, and this time, instead of the trails disappearing when the ball resets, it's just going to pause the trail, so it's not going to create any more trails. And then that'll allow us to move our objects, get them where we want them, launch the ball again. It's going to turn the trail back on, and then you'll notice it didn't quite hit. So one of the things I'm thinking about doing in the overhead cam is maybe tilting it a little bit so we get some perspective. But anyways, so hopefully that's going to help our player a little bit to be able to determine where to put the objects to get in the path of the ball. So we have that helper there. Hope you've enjoyed this video. It was pretty straightforward, so there's not too much in the way of difficult concepts or anything. And hope to see you the next time. Thanks.